Hey guys, and welcome back to my channel. For those of you who it is the first time here, welcome, which it's one of my first videos, so majority of you will be new. As you can see by the title of this video, I wanted to speak about something that a lot of people in the BE/bladder extrophy community don't really go too public about. I wanted to talk about the life that I live now from when I was born through till now, and just explain a little bit about what bladder extrophy is, and exactly what I do in life now to make my life easier, and how I've turned out to be what I would say is pretty okay. I know that there are, I guess, a lot of people who, especially parents, when they find out that their child has bladder extrophy, whether or not it's through when they're born and you find out then, or whether or not it's through an ultrasound, regardless of how you find out, it will be a complete shock to the system. And without a doubt, becoming a parent, your worst fear is that something is going to be wrong with your baby. Then to add in the fact that that there is something wrong with them, or that there is going to be some sort of an issue with them, and knowing that they're going to have to go through surgery would be, I can only imagine, extremely hard. So this is why I wanted to make this video. Videos following this will most likely be our step to falling pregnant, and the journey that we are currently on to try and conceive our first child, whilst also dealing with bladder extrophy and things like that. I wanted to make this video before I started getting into the TTC and infertility session, like videos and things like that, because I was concerned that if I jumped straight in, that a lot of people watching my videos would not actually understand half of what I was speaking about, or half of the issues that we have found that we have. So if you'd like to find out more, if you'd like to hear my journey with bladder extrophy, then please stick around and let's get into it. Okay, let's get into it. So the start of my story obviously started when I was born. So I was born in 1992 in Maitland Hospital in New South Wales, Australia. And I was then rushed to the John Hunter in Newcastle when they found out that I had bladder extrophy. So my parents did not know before I was born. Back then it was fairly rare for people to find out in their scans. The only real way now to tell in scans is to actually watch the baby's bladder fill up and then watch it release as well. And back then it wasn't a requirement, I guess, where they actually had to watch it fill and empty. They just had to basically check that it was there and tick the box, and they moved on. So that's why a lot of bladder extrophy patients now are detected during the scans compared to what they were before. So the doctor I was under was Dr. Kelly, and the next doctor under him was Dr. Cassie. He was only starting out in his career, and Dr. Kelly was getting ready to retire. So basically Dr. Kelly saw me through until he retired, and basically had Dr. Cassie follow along with me to kind of get a feel for what needed to be done. Now, Dr. Cassie being fairly new in operating and all of that, although he had a lot of experience in other bladder and urology style operations and things like that, he didn't necessarily have a lot of expertise or knowledge when it came to bladder extrophy. So for a lot of my childhood, I guess I was kind of like the guinea pig, and I don't blame anyone for that. I don't blame the doctors for it at all. It's just how it is. I was admitted into hospital, and I actually still have all of my hospital bands, but I was admitted into hospital over 30 times before I was 13. And that was simply because they wanted to trial and error certain surgeries before they opted to go for anything too extreme. So the idea was to try and get me to be continent. So I guess I should probably explain what bladder extrophy actually is. So bladder extrophy is when a child is born with their bladder on the outside, and there are many different variants of bladder extrophy. So you can have it just with your bladder on the outside, or you can have your bladder on the outside and problems with your kidneys, kidneys not formed properly, or the missing kidneys, or different things like that. There's also a lot of other things that can go wrong developmentally while the child is still in the mother's stomach, still growing. So I had what they call classic BE. So it's basically my bladder was on the outside, my kidneys are still two different sizes, but enough to still function normally. I have 25% functionality on one side and 75% on the other, which for what I've been through is pretty impressive. I'm pretty lucky in that sense. So my first surgery was my closure surgery, which I believe was at 9 months old. So my bladder was still on the outside of my body until that surgery at 9 months of age. Now, my parents worked a 24-hour business, and luckily that 24-hour business was run from home. So they were lucky in the sense that they were always home, and that, you know, even though my mum was always home because I was only a newborn, my dad was also always at home as well to lend a helping hand. I've now helped and seen a lot of families where the father has to go back to work straight away, and they don't necessarily have the option to have both parents at home, and I can only imagine how difficult that would be to not have that extra support there all the time when you need it. So I had my closure surgery done, and then there were surgeries that followed that were basically to try and get me to be continent, to stop me from leaking, because up until the age of 13 my bladder was so small that it only held 30 mils. So for a 13-year-old, that's basically nothing. It basically ran straight from my kidneys through my urethras and straight into my bladder and out the other end. It did not have a chance to stay in one spot for very long. So they tried to do a few different things, and when I was getting close to the age of 13, Dr. Cassie actually pulled us all into his office and said, you know, reaching puberty is going to be really difficult if you're incontinent. If you're constantly wetting yourself and you're in pull-ups at the age of 13, and then adding into the fact that your period is most likely going to start soon, would really be quite unhygienic to begin with, and then also a really horrible thing to deal with. It wouldn't be pleasant to have to deal with both of those things at one time. It would also probably make my life a lot more difficult being at school, and, you know, especially at that time I was still in primary school. I was still in year 6, so I was still fairly young, but it is also a big decision to put onto a 13-year-old. So they basically gave me the option to have no more surgeries, which at the time, after as many surgeries as I had, I was pretty happy with never having to have surgery again. But the other option was to have a permanent bag attached, or to have a metrophenol or a stoma put into my stomach, and I would be able to catheterize through that. Now, the decision that we ended up making was to go with a metrophenol or stoma, whichever way you say it. So basically there is a hole in my stomach that I put a tube into, and it releases any urine out of my bladder. Now, that surgery was hectic. There was a lot of things that came after that, a really long recovery process, and then also learning how to catheterize on my own without having my parents there or a doctor there to help me, which was a really big shock, because I had been in pull-ups or diapers and then into pull-ups my whole entire life. So even going to the toilet wasn't a necessary step for me. So then having to go to the toilet and having to go, you know, every single 4 hours, and if not earlier than that, and trying to learn my cues, or my body's cues, to know when to go to the toilet was really, really difficult. So we took this step forward and decided to go with the metrophenol, which, to be honest, was hands down the best decision that we could have ever made. Although there is, you know, a high risk of infections and things like that. Obviously you're putting a foreign body into your body, and that does cause a risk of infection, but I also think that I would have been completely miserable if we had have either not done a surgery or if we had have gone with a bag. Now, my doctor at the time had said that his concern with me going with a bag was that as a teenager, I wouldn't be able to wear really anything that anyone else was wearing without having to show off my bag. And already being a self-conscious 13-year-old about to go into high school with already all of these scars on my stomach and already feeling bad about myself, then adding that in was just going to be detrimental to my mental health. And he was a little bit worried that I would not cope with the physical side of that. And to be completely honest, I think he was 100% right. I was a very, very self-conscious kid. I did get bullied a lot in school because of my condition, and since then I've actually had people who used to bully me come up and apologize because as kids they didn't quite understand, you know, that I was different and that I was different for no other reason other than bad luck. And, you know, and they felt bad for what they had done to me when I was younger, and that showed a lot of courage on their part. So we decided to go with the Mitrofanov. Sorry, I am completely rambling. So we decided to go with the Mitrofanov, and I had that surgery done during the Christmas holidays. So in Australia, we have about 6 weeks off. So my recovery was basically 6 weeks. So I think I had a week off before the Christmas holidays started, and then went back to school as normal the following year into year 6. So the recovery for me was probably about the 6 weeks, but I believe I was only in hospital for probably about 2 or 3 weeks. And I remember that my doctor had actually recommended for me to stay an extra week, and I was 100% hands down, I'm going home. It did not matter what anyone told me, I was going home, I was ready. And they kept saying to me, you know, like, we really don't think that you're ready. And then my doctor made me a deal. And he said to me, if you can walk from your bed to that elevator down the hall and back, which was probably about maybe 200 meters, but keeping in mind I was still in excruciating pain. And he said, if you can walk to that elevator and come all the way back without any assistance, then you can go to the Ronald McDonald House tonight, and then tomorrow, as long as you are fine overnight, you can go home tomorrow. Now, the biggest thing that he was concerned about was that we actually lived 2 hours inland from Newcastle. So from our closest major hospital, back then it was probably a little bit more than 2 hours. So adding that into the account that, you know, he was worried that if I got home and something went wrong, it wasn't just around the corner and we could go back to the hospital. It was going to be a whole, get everyone into the car, let's drive 2 hours to get there, and then if nothing ended up being wrong, drive 2 hours back, or even then get stuck in hospital again, and then have my parents 2 hours away. So he was a little bit hesitant, but there was no stopping me. I got to that elevator and I got back, and I may have been crying from the pain, but I did it and I got to go home. So that, I think, was when I started to kind of take control of my health, and I knew that I was ready to go home. Although I was in pain, I wanted to go home. I was mentally prepared to go home. And I think from then I started to take a really big, I guess, grasp on what my health was and taking care of myself and ensuring that I have always been an advocate for myself. So if doctors or nurses, or especially if I go to the emergency room, if anyone tries to tell me that it's not that bad, then I'm perfectly fine. When I know that I'm sick, or if I want them to look into, say, an extra scan or an extra blood test or anything like that, because I'm a little bit cautious of maybe there might be something else wrong, even if I have a slight inkling that there might be something else that they haven't looked at yet, I will push until they do it. And if they won't do it, then I will see another doctor to do it. And I know that a lot of doctors probably don't enjoy that side of patients, but to be honest, I need to make sure that my health is paramount, that everything in my health is as perfect as it can be, so that I can live a healthy life, because I don't want to get to 30 or 40 and turn around and realize that because they didn't run that one test 10 years ago, that there is actually something wrong and it could have been fixed, but now it can't be because it's too late. So to kind of wrap up today's video, I thought I would just kind of give you a bit of an overview as to where I'm at now. So I still catheterized. I am on basically no medication for my bladder whatsoever. My kidneys, like I said, are at 25 and 75%, or 25% on one side, 75 on the other, which isn't perfect, but it's pretty good considering. And then that's pretty much it when it comes to health wise. I'll get more into the TTC and pregnancy journey in my next few videos, but just on the bladder side of things, everything is reasonably okay. I do have infections probably 2 to 4 times a year, which compared to when I was completely incontinent, I was having infections maybe 7-8 times a year. So it's really not that bad now, and I now know my body well enough to know when I need to go on to antibiotics or when I need to go and see the doctor about it and see them further. Other than that, I live a pretty normal life. I work full time. I just bought a house last year with my new husband. We got married in July of this year, and last year we bought our first house together. So everything for us is still pretty normal. I live a completely normal life along with my husband and the rest of my family. And yeah, that's pretty much it. So I hope that this has helped some of you, and if it has, please comment down below, like this video, subscribe if you will, because I don't have any subscribers yet, so that would be fantastic. I'd really like to see you here again, and thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you next time.